Hi, I'd like to welcome everybody to Tech Talk, brought to you by Geico. My name is Nick Morris. I'm the service manager here at Tobacco Road Harley-Davidson. I had planned on doing one on electronic rider aids, but once I found out all the stuff about the Pan America, the new bike from Harley Davidson coming out, I decided to do it on that because it's got a lot of the stuff that I wanted to talk about. One of the big things on the Pan America you may have heard about is adaptive ride height. It's an option that comes on the bike, and basically what it does is when you come to a stop, it lowers the bike by 1 inch to make it easier to reach the ground. Really cool thing that nobody else out there in the market is doing, and just thought it was really innovative for Harley to come out with something like that. But the bike is actually packed with all kinds of technology. They have three different scavenging pumps for the oil pump in three different cavities. And the reason for that is, as Harley lists it, mono wheeling. In other words, wheelies. So there's one in the stator cover, one in the clutch cover, and then one down in the sump. And those get all the oil out as the bike's picked up on one wheel and keep it flowing through the system. The reason it has that is because there's a lot of stuff in there that's oil pressure dependent. One of those items is the variable valve timing, what's commonly referred to as VTEC. Honda made it famous in some of their cars and some bikes. But basically what it does is it allows two separate sets of valves to open up at higher RPM. All the valves work at lower RPM, taking off or cruising, stuff like that. You're only working on two valves per cylinder. It is a 60-degree V-twin, so it's a slight departure from Harley's regular 45-degree V-twin, air-cooled. This one is liquid-cooled, 13.5-to-1 compression ratio, has dual downdraft throttle bodies. One of the really, really cool things about this, and this goes back to the chassis tech talk that I did, talking about steering and stiffness of the chassis and lateral flex and things. The engine is actually a stressed member. So there's three portions of the frame, and there's a front section where the steering head bolts on. There's a middle section that kind of goes over the top of the frame, or excuse me, the top of the engine. And then there's a rear section, but all of those are hung on the motor. The actual powertrain is part of the frame, or what they call a stressed member. And that allows for a chassis to be stiff, but still have enough movement so you can keep traction. Speaking of that as well, they have several different riding modes on the bike, along with some enhanced rider controls. And one of the things is cornering ABS and the link brake system. So as you're in a corner, you normally have an engine control module and a body control module on most Harley Davidsons right now. Well, they've added a inertial control module, an IMU, to the bike to kind of determine, which way the bike's moving. Is it in danger of slipping, sliding, anything like that? And it can make minor corrections to timing, fuel, and braking in order to compensate for that and kind of, again, assist the rider assist aids. They have what they call a TFT display, which is becoming pretty prevalent on a lot of bikes now, a lot of the higher end stuff anyway. It's a thin film transistor display. It's kind of a crystal LCD display, but it's a little higher tech. Allows for greater distinction between colors. Very sharp, very clear display, and it's a touch screen as well. However, when you're riding the bike, you actually have to use the hand controls on the handlebars to cycle through any displays. They don't want you taking your hands off the bars to monkey with that. They also have a tubeless spoke wheel, which the spokes actually go to a carrier on the outside of the wheel, and loop into this carrier instead of actually penetrating the wheel like old style Harley wheels. And that allows you to run a tubeless tire on there, and makes it easier and less costly for tire changes and stuff like that. Um, Another addition to the bike is top of the line Brembo monoblock radial mount calipers. I believe they're 30 millimeter pistons, 4 pistons in each caliper, um, on a 320 millimeter floating disc, along with a 280 millimeter disc in the rear. But all Brembo brakes all the way around, all top of the line stuff. The Going back to the suspension, it's partially adaptive, so it'll kind of adjust itself to a degree, while you're riding the bike. So in other words, if you're in they have 4 pre-programmed modes. One of them's off-road. Say you're in the off-road mode, it's going to be a little plusher, a little more forgiving just because of the terrain you're on. If you're in the street mode, it's going to be a little stiffer and compensate more for hard and fast cornering, stuff like that. So it's really neat, a lot of the stuff that they've come up with on this bike. Another thing on that motor is oh yeah, so sorry. I got sidetracked. The ride modes. So they have street, like I mentioned. That's pretty much just for riding on the street, touring with a passenger, stuff like that. And again, the IMU is going to make some adjustments, and the suspension will kind of adjust to compensate for a passenger or any luggage that you might have. There's also off-road. Again, that kind of takes a lot of the ABS and traction control stuff off of there, so you can spin the tire up, wheelie the bike, get it over some rough terrain, things like that. There's also a rain mode, which is where, again, using the IMU and the wheel speed sensors, it'll note a difference in correlation between front and rear wheel speeds. And say the rear tire's spinning up and the front one's staying planted in the rain, it's going to cut the power a little bit, and until that rear wheel has the same speed as the front. And it's really, really, really helpful in cornering, especially in crummy conditions like rain. The other one is the sport mode, which is similar to street, but it's a little more aggressive. Allows you to really flog on the bike and kind of ride it like a sport bike. And with the Revolution Max engine, the 1250cc V twin, it's got a lot of torque, it's got a lot of horsepower. I want to say they said about 145 horsepower. But a really good motor, and with the bike fully loaded, with all of the options too, it's still under 600 pounds. So definitely a great bike for the adventure touring market. Um, just a really awesome bike. If you guys have any questions or anything, feel free to email me at nick@tobaccoroadhd.com, or leave a question in the comments below. Thanks for watching Tech Talk, presented by Geico.